This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Increasingly, I'm interested in game discovery. What does that mean? Well, you know how Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance had a trailer during the Game Awards, and then another trailer voiced by Jermaine from Flight of the Conchords, and the hype campaign was so successful that it was the 8th most pre-ordered game after E3 2021? Well, that's marketing, and it's a luxury that certain games can rely on, regardless of quality, because they're put out by big publishers who pay their CEOs millions and millions of dollars a year. The indie scene does not have that luxury. For indie development, getting your game noticed is all about elbow grease and hustle and networking and luck. These people barely have enough money to pay themselves, let alone throw away on hit or miss marketing campaigns. Getting your game surfaced on a storefront is often a nightmare. Only this week, an indie developer spilled the beans on just how unhelpful Sony's approach to surfaceability is, charging $25,000 to have your game featured in the PlayStation Store, and giving developers absolutely no control over their discounting policy. Steam has long been criticized for its abysmal surfacing. With a storefront dominated by AAA games and marketing dollars, indie games are very often buried under the monthly avalanche of shovelware releases. To their credit though, Steam have admitted that this is a problem, and they've put in the work to make it better. There's been algorithm improvements and changes to the discovery queue, but perhaps their most meaningful advancements are the games festivals they've begun holding, profiling indie developers and encouraging them to upload demos of their games so that people can experience for themselves just how impressive some of these upcoming releases are. Last week, Steam held its Steam Next Festival, and I played around 35, maybe upwards of 40 demos. I was guided by the most popular and trending tabs that Steam had set up specifically for the festival, but more than that, I was guided by the various Reddit and Twitter threads I'd read, which served up recommendations for all the best stuff. So much of what I played was just so impressive. So many inventive ideas, such interesting storytelling, such incredible visual design. To top it all off, all of these games were selling for like $20 or below, were completely microtransaction free, and there wasn't a single live service in sight. You love to see it. Even with all this going on, you'd be forgiven for not knowing that the Steam NextFest took place, since it flies a little under the radar as most people's gaze stays firmly affixed to the AAA horizon. So today, I'm going to do what I can to help out. I want to share with you the 20 best demos I played during the Steam NextFest, so that you can hopefully find something you might love that you didn't even know you were looking for. In the spirit of that, can I make two requests? Number one, if you see something you like, go down to the description of this video. I've provided links to every single title. Click on that link and then wishlist it. Wishlisting is like subscribing to a YouTube channel. It's really helpful and really valuable to developers, especially those looking for funding to finish their games, since they can negotiate harder with publishers when they can show that there's already strong interest in their title. Secondly, share this video around Twitter, forums, Reddit, even Facebook. Ew. The more this video gets seen, the more chance developers have for their games to get the recognition they deserve. Does sharing a video around help me out? Yes, of course it does. But I do just fine. My videos get clicks, and whether it's 100k views or 300k, it doesn't really make a difference. What can make a difference though, is if 300,000 people see Song of Iron for the first time, and the solo developer working on that sells another 2,000 or 3,000 units, because how could you not want to play this after seeing it? Game discovery, ladies and gentlemen, that is the goal for today, and with all that preamble out of the way, let's get this show on the road. Anno Mutationem from developer ThinkStar didn't appear at the recent Steam Next Festival. It was actually a demo I played at the previous Steam Festival at the start of the year. Still, the memory of it stayed with me because Anno's art style seared itself into my brain. It's a mix of 2D pixel art and 3D modeling, with more than a little cyberpunk thrown into the mix, and all of it looks absolutely stunning. When it comes to gameplay, it's a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up with some tight but unremarkable combat. Hopefully it broadens and deepens as we get further into the game, but even if it doesn't, it's clear that Anno is leaning more into its story and its world building than anything else. This is looking just fantastic, and I can't wait to play the whole thing. It's out towards the end of this year. Chernobyl Liquidators Simulator is the rare kind of demo you can play and be like, wow, There is a lot wrong with this, but if you fix these like 20 things, then you could have a fantastic game here. The premise is brilliant. You're a firefighter, and like Mario in Isle Delfino, you strap a magic water canister onto your back and make your way into the recently exploded Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Ostensibly, the goal is to get the blaze under control, but soon it becomes clear that part of your journey is figuring out what went wrong without the aid of those handy colored cards. There is a bunch wrong with this game. The water physics are terrible, the tutorial won't stop spamming, the traversal is awful, the fact that there are these like conveniently placed fire hydrants roughly every 20 meters so you can refill your tank is really goofy. There's a lot wrong, but despite all of this, the game really drew me in and made me interested to see where they take this project. It manages to nail a sense of atmosphere in a way that isn't easy, and you get a sense that developers, Live Motion, have a really clear vision for what this could be. There's just a lot of work to get it to that place. I hope they get there. Cris Tales leaves quite an impression. From developers Dream Uncorporated and SYCK, it's a turn-based RPG in a classic fairy tale setting. Separate from its striking visuals and its excellent voice acting, the central gimmick of the game is the ability to see and move through time. Your screen is divided in three, with the past on the left, the present in the center, and the future on the right. And as you move through the world, you can see what was, what is, and what will be, and you can shape both the past and future with your decisions, choosing to help one villager over another, for example. This also affects puzzles, where you might have to go back in time to plant a fruit seed that you can then harvest in the present, a la Ocarina of Time. It also works in combat in a really interesting way. Here the enemy uses this big iron shield, but I go back in time, cast a water spell, and then I return to the present. At which point, the shield is then rusted, making it much easier to break. I thought that was really clever. I was really impressed with this overall package. I think this has a lot going for it. It's out on the 20th of this month. Inarguably, the darling of the Steam Next Festival was this bad boy, Death Trash. It's an isometric RPG that seems heavily inspired by the original Fallout games, only way weirder. You awaken inside a facility to learn that you've been exiled from somewhere and can't go home. A few corridors later, you meet this handsome fellow, a giant meat kraken who is just really lonely and needs some friends. Your journey takes you to a huge overworld map dotted with locations where you'll meet all manner of weird characters just trying to make their way in the world, all of them wondering why meat keeps growing all around them. Yes, that's meat. Oh, and you can use your vomit as a source of fuel. Death Trash's appeal doesn't live in its impressive art style, or its weird world, or its surprisingly fleshed out RPG systems, or its simple but effective combat. Its appeal is just this vibe. It's cool, it's creepy, it's offbeat, it's laconic, it's confident. You get the feeling that Death Trash doesn't care if you like it or not, and that sort of swagger is sexy. Death Trash is entering early access on August 6th. Gloomwood is what you'd get if you take Thief and then make a Thief sequel. That's really about it, but that's awesome. Developed by Dylan Rogers and David Szymanski, the team behind Dusk, Gloomwood is an immersive sim that asks you to manipulate light, sound, and objects to progress through its dark Victorian world. It's horror, but not in the jump scare sense. It comes from the oppressive setting, the imposing foes with their tower hats and their menacing eyes, the quiet terror that comes over you as you wait for an enemy to patrol past, hoping they won't notice you. Already, its physics engine is feeling so robust, allowing for meaningful expression in the way you pick up and manipulate objects, toss them to distract your foes, turn lamps on or off to hide in plain sight. So much of the demo experience was just holding your nerve as enemies stood right before you, with you just having to trust that the game's systems won't break and spoil your immersion. They never did, and I really loved my time with this. I can't wait until it releases soon, TM. Greak, Memories of Azur was one of the last demos I played, and I was kind of burned out by this point since I'd played through 30 plus demos, and I kind of felt like I was done. I had to force myself to boot this one up. I was really glad I did though, because it was just great. It's a 2D action side-scroller with an art style very reminiscent of Hollow Knight, only a hell of a lot brighter and more cheery. Its central mechanic is that you're actually controlling two characters at once, sort of. Holding down the right trigger will link them together so you'll control both at the same time, but a big part of the game is letting the two characters go their separate ways so they can open doors for each other or solve puzzles together. Each character has their own movement and combat style. Each of the enemies I faced off against felt wonderfully designed. Each space I explored looked fantastic. The presentation factor here is A+, and if the gameplay can hold up over the course of the game, I think this is going to be one that a lot of people are going to enjoy. It's from Navigante Entertainment and it releases on the 18th of August. Industria is a game I discovered on Twitter and I immediately liked the look of it. The developer Bleak Mill aren't being remotely coy about their inspirations, specifically stating they're drawing from the likes of Half-Life 2 and Bioshock. Booting up the game and playing the demo, I was like, yeah, this is definitely Half-Life 2 inspired. You're a scientist, something goes wrong with an experiment at a secret facility, all hell breaks loose and you get thrown into the middle of it. The opening segment of the facility sets up some strong art direction that feels like something out of Control's oldest house, but the second half of the demo hard cuts to a city setting, and it's here that some might find this a little too close to the source material, no pun intended. Industria's world is unmistakably City 17, with its early 20th century townhouses and portico draped in cold robotic steel girdings and fortifications. Its gunplay feels equally reminiscent of Half-Life, striking a balance between one-shot realism and arcadey spray and pray. Yes, this is very Half-Life 2, but I actually really enjoyed this, and it's not like Valve are serving up Half-Life 3 anytime soon. If a game wants to pick up where Half-Life left off, albeit at an indie budget, and they're making a good, fun game worth playing, then I'm all for that. Industria is slated for release in Q3 of this year. Sable is easily one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. I think we used to call this stuff cel-shaded back in the day, but that's probably not the right terminology for it these days. All I know is I don't think I've ever seen a game that looks quite like this before. Its stark black lining creating this contrast to separate and accentuate the brilliant colours that beam from every pixel on your screen. What's even more remarkable is that these visuals evolve with the time of day, sinking into pastel peach and apricot as the sun swings low, and arriving at melancholic blues and lilac when it disappears beneath the horizon. It's absolutely stunning. Gameplay-wise, I don't quite know yet, to be honest. So far, its controls are a little slippery, particularly when traversing, and its gameplay loop is very fetch quest driven, but that might be just fine if the game is able to consistently dazzle you with its locations and its soundtrack, which, by the way, is already sounding so special. There is a genre of game that is just about being somewhere beautiful and soaking it in. Games like Journey, or Abzu, or Gris. It's not about the gameplay, it's about everything else. Sable looks like it's marching to the beat of that drum, and I'm absolutely down for that. Sable is releasing September 23rd this year. Shady Knight is another game that wasn't part of the most recent Steam Festival. I played it earlier this year as well, and damn, this is some seriously good shit right here. There is certainly an emerging subgenre of these gauntlet-style, bullet-time-driven action games, games like Mirror's Edge and Ghost Runner and Superhot, etc. There are actually heaps of these on Steam, but most of them are pretty trash because they can't nail the fundamentals of locomotion, traversal, level design, weapon feedback, and hit registration. Shady Knight gets all of those things right, and it does it so effortlessly. The second you take control of your character, you're like, yes, this is how this should feel, awesome, let's kill all the things. And from there, your expression as a player is limited only by your skill and imagination. It's a simple demo, don't get me wrong, but it showcases such a strong understanding of the fundamentals of this type of game that I'm really looking forward to the final release, whenever that ends up being. Song of Iron is another game I discovered on Twitter long ago, where the solo dev behind this posted a short clip and I was like, wait, what the fuck? This looks incredible. Song of Iron appears to be little more than what it says on the tin. It's a Viking-themed 2D side-scroller, that's about it. But if you're looking at the same gameplay I am, then you're already more than a little interested. The game achieves such a magnificent looking aesthetic owing to its textures, its lighting, the way the cloth moves, the shifts in perspectives it utilizes, and more. In particular, Song of Iron does marvelous things with foreground and background, with enemies running into the foreground to foreshadow their arrival, and distant troop lines creating the impression of a chaotic battlefield that you're charging through. Character animations are also top-notch, with a fluidity to them that's almost Homeric, as though you're a sort of warrior poet of old, endlessly weaving a tapestry of destruction that will serve as the first draft of the histories written about you. I'm not expecting deep, sophisticated combat here, and my time with the demo solidified that expectation. Combat is fine, but the overall experience is a hell of a lot more than fine, and that's what matters. Song of Iron is targeting a release date in the next few months. Terra Nil was one of the other darlings of the Steam Next Festival, and for very good reason. It's really good. Developed by Free Lives and published by Devolver Digital, Terra Nil is what they're calling a reverse city builder, in the sense that the game isn't building civilization, but rather restoring nature. The demo provided you a barren tabula rasa that had to be nurtured back to health by detoxifying the land, rehydrating it, reshaping its waterways, and more. Later, you're asked to do controlled burns to initiate the cyclical rejuvenation that Mother Nature usually takes care of, and as you progress through the various stages of revivification, you're asked to achieve and maintain a balance of forests, pollinated fields, and wetlands. This is the perfect sort of game if you just want to sit back and relax, slowly solving the puzzle that is each new fragile landscape. This is certainly going to be niche, but if you're into this sort of thing, I expect you'll love it. No release date for this one yet. The Fermi Paradox is a game that almost didn't make this list, but the more time I spent with it, the more intrigued I became by it. It's a text-based management game where various life forms across the galaxy appear and you can chart the course of their evolution. You can squash a newly formed species before it even has the chance to crawl out of the primordial soup, or you could fast-track their advancement, granting them vast technological and population boons that will see them rapidly reach for the stars and beyond. You'll decide if their spacefaring ambitions are realized, and if so, what posture they'll take when they inevitably meet with other species. There's a lot of flexibility in these stories. For example, I was able to advance one species to become spacefaring, and just as their first shuttle took off, I triggered a mass extinction event on their home planet. Now the few aboard the spaceship were the last of their kind, and their story immediately changed from one of triumphant expansionism to one of desperate survival on board an ark in search of a friendly port. The Fermi Paradox isn't going to impress anyone mechanically, but it does open up a space for introspection, dynamic storytelling, and true role-playing. Like, imagine if the choices in Mass Effect actually affected the ending. That's Fermi Paradox in a nutshell. It's out sometime this month. The Legend of Tianding is a 2D side-scroller beat-em-up from developer CG based in John Cena's favourite country, Taiwan. It tells the story of a Taiwanese folk hero who beats up the rich and gives to the poor, though I wonder if the real-life Tianding was as agile and vertically enabled as his video game counterpart. Tianding is a classic Eastern origin story where a hero learns new martial arts techniques from his kung fu master, stuff like that rising dragon kick that Fei Long has, or a flying kick like Liu Kang has, or a 1-inch punch like Beatrix Kiddo has. All of the action is super tight with great hit registration, smartly designed foes, and a strong focus on disarming enemies to use their own weapons against them. There's some platforming in there as well to pace things, but it's pretty standard stuff. The real highlights are the action and the really impressive visuals. I just love the art style. All of it pops with such charm. I'm not expecting huge things from Tianding, just a straightforward, fun 2D beat 'em up. The demo certainly served that up, so I'm keen for more when it releases. No date yet. There Is No Light from developer Zellart is a game that took me a while to warm up to. Its distinctive pixel art and vibrant post-apocalyptic world certainly piqued my interest, but at first I found the gameplay a little stiff and unforgiving and not necessarily in a good way. Over time, I came to understand that your kit is really strong if you know how to use it properly, so a lot of the highly tuned enemies and encounters are just a response to how much power you're capable of bringing to the table. I played a few of these hack and slash pixel art demo games during this festival, and of all of them, There Is No Light certainly had the deepest and most rewarding combat. The ability to charge, throw, and switch your weapons in an instant created a sort of skill ceiling that you really want in a game like this. It certainly wasn't accessible, but it was good, and you get the feeling that it has the sort of depth that will sustain your interest throughout a full playthrough of the game. If you don't mind having your ass handed to you over and over again, There Is No Light might ring your bell when it comes out sometime in the future. No release date yet. Timberborn was one of my favorite demos that I played this year. I say this year because this also wasn't part of the Steam NextFest. Their demo was put up at the start of the year, and it's still up, by the way. It's a city builder featuring beavers. It's cute little beavers collecting wood so they can build log cabins and water mills and eventually hydroelectric dams. When I first played the demo, all of my beavers kept dying of old age without reproducing, and I was like, what's going on here? Why aren't these beavers getting it on? Turns out I had to build more dwellings for the beavers because when they have their sexy times, they like to have a bit of privacy. I can respect that. You don't want no David Attenborough filming you while you're getting down to your beaver business. When you do find out how population works in this game, and when you get to grips with the scale of its world and its buildable objects, you'll quickly realize that you can build vast cities teeming with buck-toothed life. A few people have commented that there's little to distinguish this from a lot of other city builders in the sense that it doesn't lean enough into its beaver motif, and I agree with that in part, but a setting can go a long way, and I found Timberborn to be one of the most chilled and relaxing demos I played because its quiet soundscape and wood-paneled aesthetic just clicked with me. Plenty of people are quite hyped for this one. It's hitting early access sometime this year. I think of all the demos I played during the festival, Toem from Something We Made was the most polished. It felt like you could ship it tomorrow and it would be good to go, every inch of it sparkling in grayscale glory. It's a simple adventure game where some weird-looking creature gets pushed from the nest by his mother, ordered to traverse the countryside and take pictures of whatever takes your fancy. Traveling by bus to new locations, you'll meet a wide array of quirky characters who all seem to be in the middle of a desperate existential crisis that can only be solved by taking a photo of something, and wouldn't you know it, you're just the thing for the job. To imply that Toem is just about taking pictures, though, is to sell it short. There's some really clever puzzle design that's gone into each of these areas, some fantastic level design, and some strong characterization. The game really excels in this sort of micro storytelling where you meet a character and within 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, you immediately get a sense of who they are and you're fully bought in on whatever weird task they've set for you. I suspect this one is going to be a big hit, not necessarily in sales, but in the love it will invoke from those that play it. Toem is out at some point this year. Alright, it's time for my favorite demo of the entire Steam NextFest. Here we go.
Name?
My name is Fox. Jesse Fox.
You don't seem to be Russian.
Russian? Me?
You were piloting a Russian aircraft 2 hours ago.
I also drive a Toyota, and I'm not Japanese.
This is UnMetal, and if you can't already tell, it is to Metal Gear what Spaceballs is to Star Wars, a shameless spoof that plumbs the rich source material to create a gag reel aimed squarely at the fans obsessed enough to get all the jokes and references. Gravel-voiced, bandana-wearing soldier of fortune Jesse Fox is shot down behind enemy lines while piloting a Hind D.
Hind D?
And he now needs to escape the prison he's found himself in. It's a classically inspired 2D stealth game like the original Metal Gear games, but spiritually this is absolutely riffing on the 3D Metal Gear Solid. In this way, it becomes a sort of Metal Gear Solid D-make, complete with codex conversations with a guy named Colonel and plenty of fourth wall-breaking shenanigans, like this.
Hey, a coin. You're not going to pick it up, right? Yeah, why not? Come on, Mike, it's the oldest trick ever.
I honestly stepped into this thinking it would be a crappy parody game that was just using humor to distract us from the fact that they were cashing in on our nostalgia. But no, this is actually a very well-made game. Already it had engaging stealth scenarios, it had clever puzzles like you need to combine items to create weapons. There was a boss battle that went really well, and when I equipped the eye patch, half the screen went black. I mean, you gotta respect the commitment to the bit there. Separate from the Metal Gear stuff, this was just a funny game that took aim at schlocky action heroes and cliches just as much as it had Snake in its sights. You could remove the Metal Gear from this, and I think it would still stand on its own 2 feet, not quite as strongly, but well enough. And I think that's a huge litmus test for a title like this. Anyway, UnMetal is cool. I loved it. It's out sometime in the next few months. Unsighted from Studio Pixelpunk was another one of those top-down 2D hack-and-slash games similar to There Is No Light, but where that was rough and tough and unforgiving, Unsighted provides a much more accessible approach to the genre. You awaken in a lab, obviously freshly thawed from whatever tube they had you in, and after a quick search for a weapon, you're in business, slicing, dicing, dodging, and parrying your way through densely detailed environments. The combat felt so intuitive. In a matter of moments, you're immediately deflecting enemy attacks because the clear enemy telegraphs and generous parry windows make it easy to do so. The focus here isn't on a punishing experience, but rather a fun one that you can move through and enjoy with relative ease. Unsighted seems to be offering up a little bit of everything: combat, exploration, puzzle solving, Metroidvania, RPG light, storytelling. None of it stands out as amazing, but it all seems really competent and it clicks together so seamlessly. I think this will be one that fans of the genre will get a kick out of. No release date yet, but it's out sometime this year. Now, I'll admit I'm not much of a strategy guy. I don't play many strategy games, not for a long time at least. I haven't played Crusader Kings or all of those Paradox games. I respect them from afar. Wartales, then, is not a title I feel fully equipped to comment on, since I know that strategy games are a very unique beast. Still, I have to tell you, I had a lot of fun with this, and I'd very much like to play more of it. Wartales drops you onto a map at the end of a major conflict. Your small band are essentially just trying to survive whatever dangers the countryside throws at them, which is usually roaming bands of bandits and mercenaries looking for quick coin. While exploring, you're pushing through the fog of war to reveal forests and townships and abandoned keeps, but when it's time to throw down, the game turns into a tactics-based affair with some familiar but reliable combat mechanics. Stuff like protecting your archer and backstabbing enemies for bonus damage, that sort of thing. Wartales shines in its attention to detail and the roleplaying that comes from that. You'll meet a chained up deserter and you have a choice to free them or not, but only if you have a lockpick, which means you'll need a thief in your party to craft and use it. Every merchant you bump into on the road is a chance for either bloody robbery or unremarkable commerce. Every new member that joins your troop is a new chance to shape them, their stats, their gear, their combat style, their profession, even their story, as you may choose to sell them to the local blacksmith in return for a regular discount. Wartales moves slowly but very deliberately, and I really value any game that makes me consider all my choices so carefully. Wartales is from Shiro Games, and it's hitting early access sometime this year. Finally, let me present to you this little gem, White Shadows. Okay, so first up, let me say this. White Shadows is still pretty rough at the moment. It's a game that is heavily dependent on perspective, since perspective gives the scenes their power. Having said that, perspective often clashes with gameplay here, as certain viewpoints can obscure where you should be going and what you should be jumping on. This game definitely needs some work when it comes to level design clarity. What carries it though, and why it appears on this list, is the setting and the art style and the music and the super dark themes it's willing to lean into. Its world looks like a black and white rapture city, only populated with creepy anthropomorphic pigs and crows and surely a range of other creatures we haven't even met yet. When the perspective does work, it really works, showcasing an industrial dystopia of billboards and monorails and airships and more. Similar to games like Limbo and Inside, White Shadows does have environmental puzzles to punctuate your journey, but the appeal of the game rests more in observing the background than the foreground, its world silently telling a story that the protagonist just happens to be in front of. White Shadows does need a lot of work, but if it can get the time it needs to percolate, I think this one could be a little bit special. It's from developer Monocle, and it's out sometime this year. So those were the best demos that I played during the Steam Festival. Having said that, I did not have time to play every single demo during the festival because there were 700 of them and that would be insane. There were plenty of demos that I missed, so I want to give a brief shout out to a few games that I didn't play but heard excellent things about, because I think skipping them in this sort of video would be a disservice to those developers. Dread Templar is a classically inspired boomer shooter that got a great rap. Grime was one of the most visually interesting games of the show, and reports were that its punishing Souls-like gameplay was equally impressive. Lens Island, I'm very bummed that I missed out on this one because it looks fantastic, like an isometric Valheim with its mix of combat building and cultivation. Rogue Lords is a colourful Slay the Spy inspired deck builder with a demonic motif, and Unpacking appears to be a game where you just unpack stuff. Road 96 got a lot of buzz for giving us the procedurally generated road trips that we aren't allowed to have right now. Carrier Command 2 lets you take control of a freaking air carrier, yes please. They Always Run got universal praise for its aesthetic, its animations, and its tight beat-em-up action. Warhammer 40k Battle Sector impressed more than a few Warhammer fans, and Forrest Gump fans rejoice. The video game adaptation is finally here. Lawnmower Simulator. which at one point had one of the best bugs I've ever seen in a video game. That was Steam's NextFest, or at least it was NextFest as I experienced it. I really love this stuff. I think it's great that playable demos are back on the menu. We used to get them on the cover of official Xbox magazine and various PC magazines, but that all went the day of the dodo when magazines died. AAA games don't go down this route either because they don't need to, or because they're too afraid that a demo might upset their carefully laid marketing plans. Indies are out here fearlessly putting their game into the hands of players before money has changed hands, and I really respect how straight up that is. Kind of feels like it should be the way this whole industry works, but that's a topic for another video. I truly hope you saw something here today that piqued your interest, and like I said at the start, if it did, be sure to wishlist it. Share this video around with all who care to listen, and even those that don't care to listen. And if you want to do yours truly a solid, you can drop a like on the video, hit the subscribe button, ding the notification bell. Thank you for tuning in, and a big thank you to this video sponsor, Squarespace. If you've been around these parts before, you've probably heard me talk about Squarespace once or twice, maybe. No, but seriously, Squarespace has been supporting this channel for around 2 years now. They are in fact my longest running partner, and I really do thank them for that. I've always loved having them as a partner because they put out a great product that I am more than happy to recommend to you. If you haven't heard of them, Squarespace is a platform that allows you to easily create custom-built websites that look professional. So if you're starting a business, or you want to promote your art, or you want to start a blog or whatever, then Squarespace is the perfect place to do just that. You just select a template, customize it in minutes, enable whatever features take your fancy like e-commerce or calendars or a comment section or whatever you like, and then you can publish it. There are of course detailed analytics allowing you to see how your website is tracking, so you can see, what people are clicking on and how the website is doing, which is of course very important. To get started, visit squarespace.com, and when you're ready to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup for a 10% discount on your first purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down so I know to do better for next time. If you enjoyed yourself, consider subscribing, and if you really enjoyed yourself, maybe consider hitting that notification bell so you never miss a video. You can see my patrons here on the left. They're awesome. They're amazing. If you want to join them, check out my Patreon page. Thank you again. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.